Okay. Uh, Hello, everyone. I hope everyone's having a great day. Thank you for joining the third webinar of our three-part series on plastic pollution and climate change titled Breaking the Plastic Cycle, Solutions for a Cleaner Future by Climate Tracker Asia in collaboration with Break Free from Plastic. I am Ramon Royendoyen, a business and economics reporter at Filter.com. I also contributed to the Energy Reporting Guide of Climate Tracker Asia, a nonprofit journalism organization that supports journalists and storytellers in the region to create impactful climate stories. Today, we will be discussing the plastic crisis and the need for corporate accountability and solutions. Stay tuned until the end because Climate Tracker Asia and Break Free from Plastic will also offer story grants to journalists and other communicators who can produce multimedia reports on the topics discussed in the webinars. I will be giving more information about the story grant at the end of the webinar. So for today's webinar, I'm joined by three esteemed panelists: Rayang Nusantara from the Alliance of Zero Waste Indonesia, or AZWI, Abdul Gofar from WALHI, and Eileen Lucero from Eco Waste Coalition. Each speaker will have 7 minutes to present their topic. After their presentations, we'll have a Q&A, so please type your questions in the chat window, and we'll get to them during the Q&A portion. By the end of the webinar, we hope you will understand more about the impacts of the crisis on the health of the people and the planet, and the genuine solutions to address the waste problem. So to start this conversation, let's welcome Rayang Nusantara, whose presentation will focus on countering the sachet culture narrative, identifying the top plastic polluters and their false solutions, and effective SUP bans and policies in Asia Pacific that others may adopt. Rayang has more than 8 years of experience in environmental campaigns. He currently works as the national coordinator of the Indonesian Diet Plastic Bag Movement. He is also part of the Break Free from Plastic Movement, Global Alliance for Alternative Incinerators, and the United Nations Sustainable Development Solutions Network Youth in Indonesia.
Okay, hello Ramon. Hello
Hi.
everyone. Okay, so it's my turn now.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Hello from Bali, Indonesia. As the first turn, I have to try to not tell everything this because we have still two amazing presenters. So maybe from my side, I will give you some of the context about how sachets in Indonesia polluting our environment, and what's the solutions that exist now around sachet waste, and what my movements do to tackle that. So we have these Stop Sachet campaigns starting last year. It's our alliance new campaigns to focus on sachet that's produced by the manufacturer. So my name is Rayang Nusantara. I'm the co-coordinator of the Alliance for Zero Waste Indonesia, as well as the deputy director of the Indonesia Plastic Bag Diet Movement. Next slide. Just a little bit of context around sachets. Next slide, please. There are billions of sachets sold worldwide, and just 50% of them sold only Southeast Asia, which mean our countries. And there are a potential number of increasing the sachet production globally until 1.3 trillion in 2027. But in Indonesia itself, the plastic sachet waste is 16%, and it's polluting our river. So there's a picture said sachetmu cemari sungaiku. So it's your sachet pollutes my river. So even we have a lot of sachets. They're planning to increase the productions, while there is none working on how to tackle the sachet. Next slide. How can this be happens? There are a lot of many things. One of them is the lack of government enforcement. We have the regulations on waste management, many of them, but uh, there are a lot of promotions from investors, from industry, from the global north country around sachet through the chemical recycling and other closed loop and other open loops kind of recyclings that tries to tackle the sachet waste, but instead it's actually undermine the zero waste solutions, the reuse initiatives that will be more explained by Eileen later. But the solutions around zero waste, around reuse is increasing now, but so there is opportunity for us to promote that to counter the sachet narratives, and especially when the reduction part of the waste management, it's also stated in our regulations. Next slide. So there are a lot of brand audits campaigns happening last years, and these 5 manufacturers, these 5 FMCGs always be in our top 10, even in the top 5. So Unilever is a global company. Wings, Indofood, Marimas, and Mayora is our local brands. It's a local company, but it's very big in our cities. Even we can find the Mayora products in the Philippines. The Copico brands is very big in the Philippines. So I want to say sorry, but it's not my fault. So yeah, so we have to deal with these at least 5 big FMCGs on how to push them to really responsible with their packaging. Next slide. So this is one of our works. So we want to really understand why people choose sachets more than reuse. So there are like 5 types of the pouch. So we define sachets as the pouch, the bigger one and the smallest one. So for the pouch packaging, most people in Jakarta buy a dish soap, a detergents, a floor cleaner, a fabric softener, a body wash, and ironing spray. So for the smaller packaging, they mostly buy shampoo, fabric softener, detergent, the ironing spray. For the that's for the personal care and the home care products. While for the food products, most of them buy pouch packaging for cooking oil, sweet soy sauce, and the coffee products. Next slide. So why? This is the reason why they still keep using the sachet. So they argue that it's easy to find at the nearest store and easy to use and right amount per use, especially for moms who wants to wash the clothes. It's very important to have the exact amount per use. If we use from the bottles, it could be too much or too small, the portion of the packaging. So this is also the new information for me because most of them it's this argumentation, the right amount per use, so they don't have to use more detergent or more liquids into the applications. So another reason is the cheaper price. Of course, we don't. The manufacturer don't count the environmental and social price of the products, and most of them is to use for the home use and also for travel use. So I heard from my colleagues from the reuse operator that it's not always the low income community that use the sachet, but also the high income, especially for those who go to the gym. They prefer to use sachet um, for shower after gym rather than to use the bottles before. It's easier. Um, uh, it's easier to use and it's not heavy. But yeah, so um, the argumentation or our assumptions that sachet is always for the low income community. It's not. So it's we have to bring everyone to discuss this from the high income to the low income. So next slide. So yes, solutions reuse. Why we are focusing on this narratives since last year's when we start the sachet campaigns and try to counter them with the reuse narratives. So if the question is how we can reduce sachet waste, the answer is we have to build the reuse solutions. So I think this is not my latest presentations. So do you have my latest file? Because I have added more reasons about the sachet, because I added the pops in sachet because we have the sorry for that. We have our new research on, yeah, I'm resending to you my, yes. So sorry for that, sorry for the technical glitch. So we have a new study around sachet that we try to identify if there are any persistent organic pollutants in the sachet packaging. So we try to to identify the PBDEs and the PFAS. So actually, there are PBDEs in like more than 10 samples of sachets that we identify, and then but there is no PFAS in the sachet packaging. But otherwise, this kind of toxic chemical will be accumulated in the environment, especially when you burn it. So imagine if we use the incinerations or the RDF, those toxic chemicals will release to the air, will release to our environment. Not to mention if we throw it in the landfill, the leakage will be everywhere. So even if the the toxicity level is below the standards, which is maybe the producer will say it's fine, it will be okay for your health, but it's not. So we have to be aware of this, and we have a plan to continue this study on this. So we have the right argumentations why we really need to phase out sachet. So so before that, this is the solutions, not solutions, around sachet waste promoted by FMCGs. there are chemical recycling named Creasolves, which is not really working well. Gaia has research on this that you can access through their website, no-burn.org. And then there are also a closed loop, an open loop recycling that's really polluted both the toxic and the microplastics that came from the rejected sachet packaging from the manufacturers into a low-grade plastic products like anything, toys, any household products. And also from the sachet where there are also a factory that's created into another low-grade plastic products into a plastic pallet. You can imagine when you visit this facility, it's very smelly. It can make you dizzy, and it's full of invisible microplastics in the air. So next slide. The next slide is what I said about the pops in sachets. I'm not expert on this. You can reach out to Nexus 3 Foundation, or maybe Eileen, you're also in IPEN, so maybe you're very familiar with the toxic chemicals around sachets. So this is the packaging from various products, which we identified there are PBDEs on this packaging. Next slide. This one is about the RDF, which is currently being one of the strategy to mitigate the climate change in Indonesia. So in our government's enhanced NDC document, RDF is one of the strategy that they use to mitigate the climate from the waste sector. So the incinerations development is quite slow, but they try to shift to the RDF. So we have some studies around the RDF, which we see that it's also not solution because it creates new problems, because it transfers pollution from the solid waste into the air emissions and the combustion as. And Nexus 3 Ekoton and No Sampah, our members, analyze samples that all of the pellets and fluff as the result from the RDF machines contain chlorides, which is also a persistent organic pollutants, which can disrupt our hormone system, our nervous systems. And yeah, it's not good. And the bad thing is our government is providing subsidies to the local governments to build this technology. Next slide. Yes, back to reuse. So as a part of our campaign on Stop Sachet, we also have a campaigns to counter the sachet recycling into the reuse solution. So we have these projects not only to tackle the sachet waste, but also other single-use plastic packaging for foods and for beverage. So we have this collaboration with the startups to provide the service to rent or to borrow the reusable drinking cups and food packaging, and also as well as for the personal care and the home care. And we work with not only the restaurants and cafe, but also with the moms community in the district level to distribute and to sell the personal care and the home care. Next slide. As a part of our advocacy program, we also work closely with our local governments in the ministry to promote them that we need the reuse ecosystem if we want to really reduce the sachet waste packaging. So we need the industry standard, we need the policies, and we also need a public-private collaboration if we want this reuse. Is not only bring your own tumbler, bring your own bags. We want, if you're familiar with the drinking water gallons or the cooking gas, it's just like that. we only buy the packaging once in the first, and then we bring it back, and then we get a new one. So that's the idea around the reuse ecosystems. Next slide. So yeah, we have some of the policy recommendation that we sent to our governments on how to connect the single-use plastic bans into the reuse option as a solutions. And next slide. So thank you. This is our communication channels. If you want to connect, please follow our channels. And thank you. I hope I don't take too much time for other presenters. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. Really interesting presentation. Huh? I think especially in the Philippine context, you will see much more of those similarities. So moving forward, our second speaker is Abdul Gofar, who is currently an urban campaigner in Indonesian Forum for Environment, or WAHI, Friends of Earth Indonesia. He previously worked as a program officer on climate justice issues in WAHI's national office. Abdul also served as co-coordinator of Aliansi Zero Waste Indonesia from 2020 to 2021. Gofar will talk about the problems with WTE incinerator, refuse-derived fuel, and co-processing. So Gofar, take the floor now.
Thanks, Ramon. Allow me to share the presentations. Yeah, I will go fast. Maybe 7 minutes enough for me because some part already explained by Rahyan, because actually we are working together in Alliance for Zero Waste Indonesia, and while he take a role focusing on campaign against kinds of all solution such as waste to energy, refuse dairy fuel, and co-firing RDF at coal power plant and also cement kiln. So my presentation will focusing on waste to energy, refuse dairy fuel, and how refuse dairy fuel material using as a co-firing, as a co-processing, mixing with coal at the coal power plant, and also cement kiln and others industrial burning waste material. Now, as the context, Ryan explained about the SASET problems, especially in the world, in the Asia and in Indonesian context. So I have diagrams, maybe how the plastic pollution emergency, it's also linking with the climate crisis. So we facing the climate crisis in the ASEAN countries, and also in other hand, we also facing the plastic pollution. So it's like double burdens. The two problems that are mixing together in the world and also especially in Asia. But with these problems, how the governments dealing with these problems and how the civil society dealing this problem. The civil society dealing with the plastic pollution emergency with the promoting some kinds of what we call as zero waste solutions. We promoting reducing waste by single-use plastic banning. We have several countries that are banning single-use plastic, such as plastic bag, styrofoam, and other kinds of single-use plastic. And we also promoting the reuse revolution that some parts explained by Rahyan. Reuse revolution movement in Jakarta as part of the solution that promoting by a civil society and also some part of the local governments. We also promoting zero waste cities in Philippines, in Vietnam, in Indonesia also as the solution from the grassroots. We also campaigning on stop waste trade issues. It's very impacted issue that Malaysia, Indonesia, Philippines, and some of Southeast Asian countries impacted by waste trade coming from the global north. So it is still the problems. But in other hand, the government, the corporate promoting the other kinds of what we call a false solution. They focusing on dealing the problem of plastic pollution at the end of pipe solutions. Solution at the end of pipe, at the downstreams. They're promoting waste to energy incinerations. They're promoting refuse dairy fuel. They're promoting using refuse dairy fuel as a co-firing in coal power plant and so on and so on. So it is a contradiction between zero waste solution promoting by civil society, promoting by the local government, and the solution coming and backed up by the corporation and the government, especially Global North, with the tech transfer of technology with the international finance institution investments. So we will move to one kind of false solution, waste to energy. Waste to energy is, for the simple definition, waste to energy is the generation of energy in the form of heat or electricity from waste. So burning waste to get the electricity. So it is more simple definition for the waste to energy thermal technology that commonly promoting to the global south, such as Indonesia, Philippines, India, Vietnam, and other countries. So we need to aware that waste to energy thermal technology consists of several kinds of the projects. We can mention we have a gasification, we have a pyrolysis, we have an incinerator or incinerations. But the most general waste to energy that promoting by the government and supporting by international finance institution is waste to energy incinerations, because it is the easiest technology and they have a transfer of technology coming from the global north with kinds of waste to energy incineration. And in the public relations campaign or narrations, they use more good narrations. They call it waste to energy as energy from waste, advanced thermal technology, plastic to fuel, and others a good terminology that as part of the material promotions to the global south, to adaptation, to implementations, this kind of technology. And we have several claims that waste to energy is the real solutions. Waste to energy is the answer of the problems of plastic pollutions emergency. They call it waste to energy as renewable energy. They call waste to energy as low carbon technology, a climate solution, and the safe people and environment solutions. But what's the real at the ground? Well, you have several notes of the waste to energy incineration problems. It is like changing open burning system to contained burning system. So at the simplest way, the communities burning waste at the open land, open burnings. But now with the promotion of this kind of projects, it is only changing the burning from the open land to the containing burning with the some kinds of the high technology. So some problems of waste to energy incinerations. They claim waste to energy incineration is the climate solutions. It's environmental friendly, but at the fact, waste to energy releasing greenhouse gases, mainly carbon dioxide, releasing acid gases, toxic metal, and also persistent organic pollutants that Rahyang mentioned before, especially dioxin and furan. That is the problems, especially in the south, global south, that didn't have strict environmental standards. They didn't have a laboratorium to check periodically 6 months or once a year, but once in 5 years, for examples. And based on our assessments, waste to energy cannot eliminating all of the waste, burning waste, and there is no fly ash and bottom ash. At the fact, there are 20 until 25% fly ash and bottom ash that categorized as hazardous waste and needs to be carefully maintenance at the hazardous waste facility. And they claim waste to energy as the cheap solutions, as the solution that can afford by the national budget, by the local budget. But actually, we have a calculations. One waste incineration plant needs more than hundreds million US dollar for the waste incineration with the capacity 1,000 tons per day. So you can imagine what we need, what the budget, how much the budget needs to build one WTA incinerations. And it's also linking with the environmental problem and health problems. United Nations Environment Program releasing that incinerators are the main source of dioxin that are releasing into the air. And by studies from the Environmental Protection Agency, they identifying that dioxin is the causes of the various type of cancer or part of the carcinogenics. So yeah, it's not safe to the people. It's not safe to the environments. It's a contradiction with their claims before. And we have several issues in the Southeast Asian countries. In Malaysia, the WTA incinerations, it is the main causes of the increasing number of waste streams, because in Malaysia, they're using waste stream from Japan, for example, for the waste to energy incineration. So when there are lots numbers of the WTA incineration, it will be increasing numbers of the waste coming from global north, because we need more waste to burning at the WTA facilities. And especially in Indonesia, it's while he's working at the grassroots, the building of WTA incinerations, it's blocking the waste pickers that working at the landfill to waste segregation, to pick the waste that can be recycling, to access the waste at the landfill. It has happened in the Surakarta cities, one of the WTA facility in Indonesia. And also based on the research in the Anti-Corruption Commission in Indonesia, the building of WTA incinerations, it will be burdening the government budgets with the tipping or subsidies mechanisms. So it is some problems of WTA from the finance, health, environment, and also the communities impacted by WTA incineration. It is how WTA incineration scams. The waste partially coming from global north, for example, in Malaysia, coming from Japan, the waste. The technology coming from global north, for example, we have a Fortum, one of the corporations that promoting WTA in Jakarta. It is coming from the Scandinavian countries. So the technology coming from global north, and the investment, we identifying that Japan, South Korea, Australia, and Finlandia related with the investment of WTA in global south. And also it's including the Asian Development Bank and World Bank as the part of international finance institution that investment in these kinds of solutions. I will move to the next sessions talking about the refuse dairy fuel as the co-firings in the coal power plant and cement kiln. So it is the processing waste to become RDF. Rahyang mentioned waste to RDF in pellet or briquettes and other kinds of RDF. It is while he Central Java reporting, when we visiting the pilot project, the first pilot project of RDF in Indonesia. It is the processing waste to RDF, and this RDF will using for material for co-firing in coal power plant. We have several pilot project in coal power plant in Indonesia, and will be more pilot project will be more building of the RDF project. And it is our critical notes of the RDF and co-firing mechanisms. We have a fact that most of the ASEAN's waste it is dominantly by organic waste. In Indonesia, it's from 50% until 60%. So when the government promoting the RDF or WTA, it is contradiction with the kinds of waste. We need to promoting the another solution for organic waste with composting, with biodigester, with the zero waste cities approach, and so on. So not choosing the RDF. And the second, the RDF or WTA, it's also have a problems with environmental impact. the burning RDF at the coal power plant, it is increasing the greenhouse gas emissions. But the government said that the co-firing mechanism, it is part of the renewable energy source. So it is the contradiction. They call it as burning coal and waste as the renewable energy, but in the fact that the RDF coming from plastic coming from the fuel. So it is not the renewable energy, but it is the fossil fuel energy or unrenewable energy. And Rahyan also mentioning that the RDF, the co-firing, the WTA also releasing the dioxin and furan. We have an environmental impact assessment in WTA in Surakarta, and based on the environmental impact assessment, the corporation that operating WTA realizing that this project will be increasing numbers of nitrogen oxide, sulfur oxide. So it will be impacted the community that living in the site. There are two village near the WTA incineration in Surakarta. So it will be more if the building of the RDF or WTA in 12 cities that as planning by the central governments. RDF also expensive and inefficient. So if WTA needs $100 million with the capacity 1,000 ton per day, for RDF it is more cheaper, but it still needs money from the governments. The RDF site in Cilacap, the first one, it needs almost how to say 10 million US dollar. It's almost 150 billions in rupiahs. So it is also a contradiction with the effort of the reducing waste, with the communities, with the civil society starting with zero waste solution to reducing waste. But in other hand, the corporation, the government promoting to solution in the end of pipe solution. So it is contradiction with the effort to reducing waste. In other hand, they focusing on the waste treatment. We need to focusing on waste reduction, but they focusing on the waste treatment at the downstreams. And the last ones, in Southeast Asian country, for example, that a new project for the WTA for the co-firings, we didn't have strict standards. For examples, we didn't have dioxin and furans properly standard. We didn't have emission standard SMS the WHO standards. We are lowering standard from the WHO standard. So promoting WTA, promoting RDF, promoting co-firing, it's not the solutions. It is a new problems, especially for the ASEAN countries, specifically for the South Asian countries, Southeast Asian countries that still have problems in waste management. That's enough for me. Sorry for taking a long time, and sorry for the language barrier. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem, Gopang. Thank you for that. It's quite interesting, especially the numbers and the narratives that you pointed out. So I think now is the time to move on to our third speaker. This webinar's last speaker is Eileen Lucero. Eileen is the National Coordinator of Eco Waste Coalition, a strong coalition of 150 organizations working on zero waste solutions and chemical control. Eco Waste Coalition was instrumental in the package of the Philippine Clean Air Act. The organization is also taking the lead in sending back waste to source countries. Eileen will discuss different zero waste approaches, redesign, and reuse solutions, and the demands for the Global Plastics Treaty. Eileen, please take the floor.
Thank you, Ramon. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you to my co-presenters. You have presented well, no? And indeed, plastic sachets have fueled global waste crisis, no? And definitely, it is one of the biggest threats in the environment, not just in the Philippines, but in many parts of the world, polluted by none less than single-use plastics, no? So multi companies have been flooding not just the Philippines, no, with plastic sachets, uprooting traditional packaging and delivery systems. Single-use plastics, mainly yung mga sachets, is part of our household already, no? So for the Philippines alone, we are generating, according to a 2019 Gaia report, no, we are generating 2.7 million metric tons of plastic waste, of which 500,000 metric tons of this waste leaks to the ocean, no, daily. And the average Filipino uses more than 163 million plastic sachet packets yearly. We have 48 million shopping bags and 48 million tin film bags used and disposed of daily, no? Sachets and other single-use plastics are not pro-poor. People buy in sachets because there is no alternative distribution or packaging system made available by multinational companies. And with all of this plastic pollution, there is no corporate accountability. No. For decades, these companies have managed to evade their responsibility for this worsening problem, leaving governments and the taxpayers with the burden of dealing with the polluting legacy of their product packaging. No, so worse, some of these companies and their partners in government have been focusing on promoting wrong solutions to the waste crisis. No, waste solutions and false narratives are being promoted to sway the public behavior towards consuming more plastics rather than avoiding to use it. New terms such as these words were popularized, such as offsetting, neutrality, credits to folks face pace out. This is to divert the public on the real issue with while FMCGs and plastic manufacturers continue its business as usual. This strategy of recovering the same amount of plastics generated from its packaging through core processing is just shifting the plastic waste pollution from land and water streams to a worsening air pollution with public health and worsening climate at stake, especially within our vulnerable communities. No? So these false solutions must be put to an end, and corporations should start investing and shifting to genuine solutions. No, plastic free is possible, and corporations must stop producing plastics, phase out sachets, integrate zero waste principles across the value chain from source materials close to actual production to product delivery. Corporations have funds to innovate and had the capacity for product packaging redesign. So traditional practices taught us innovative and indigenous materials that are just within our reach, especially those made from organic materials like banana leaves or similar organic plants that are used in other countries. We also have here dried pandan and bamboo leaves that were weaved as baskets, containers, and bags. No, so our elders does not use sachet plastic in during their time, but they were able to display, serve, consume, and distribute their foods and products in a sustainable and traditional zero waste way. Another solution is investing and patronizing refills. Interestingly, long before multinational and large local companies began producing product sachet, there was already an active tingi or piecemeal market, not just in the Philippines. Sari-sari stores would buy household items such as sugar, vinegar, shampoo, even cooking oil in bulk and sell them to their customers by piecemeal, either by stick, by piece, by tablespoon, or by cup. Zero waste stores have existed before. They are just simply being adapted now with some modifications, no, to suit our current context. As a matter of fact, according to the Global Good Awards in 2022, there were about 300,000 refill businesses worldwide. So refill business models brings a number of advantages, no? Not only in reducing single-use packaging waste, but also supporting local suppliers, introducing unique products, and minimizing food waste as consumers are they can just buy the exact amount of what they need, no? So use of reusable packaging and delivery systems contributes also in the solution, no? The aspect of material and carbon footprint throughout the whole lifetime of packaging should also be considered. As shown in in the presentation, it's an illustration from Ellen MacArthur Foundation. Business to consumer reuse models differs in terms of packaging ownership and the requirement of for the user to leave home, to refill, return the packaging. So there are really lots of options. Either you refill it from home from a subscribers, or you refill on the go, or from from outside your home. You just have to bring your reusable containers. Same thing with the returning the packaging or returning the containers. No, you could do it from home, or you could do it in a away from home. So you should use logistical companies, no? So policy change should also take place to institutionalize a system shift towards a plastic-free world. So dapat it should be complemented, the businesses that you're establishing, the models that you're establishing should be complemented with policy. Okay, government must act on this problem urgently and decisively, both in its governance and program. So what can they do? First, they could legalize and mainstream the refilling of products, starting with toiletries, no, to start the journey toward a sachet-free future. Next is to institutionalize the deposits return scheme. We already have that in other countries, much more in the Philippines. No, we have that way years ago. No, so we have to move on providing incentives for private sector that would shift to packaging redesigns and plastic-free distribution schemes. Incentives may come in the form of tax breaks, waive payments for business permits, or cash rewards, no? And government should also invest in trade and research facilities that provide technical support to micro, small, and medium enterprises sector who are transitioning to reuse and refill system. They have to make sure that there is an available support for the package-free and eco-design. Good also to establish a program that demands greater responsibility from companies manufacturing and using plastic. By determining their obligations, targets, and specific timelines. We have several false timelines being said by these corporations just to give us hope, but then they're not really doing something, no? So legislations on the extended producer responsibility must also be placed to oblige companies to cover the cost of waste management and clean up, as well as safe disposal, the take back mechanisms. However, plastic pollution requires more than extended producer responsibility. Plastic production and reduction must be stopped and must be stressed. So that's one of the factors that will be needed in the as part of the plan. There would be timeline in the phasing out. So eventually, they will be stopping at the end, no? So while there are currently national, regional, or even international regulations on waste, none of these regulations cover sachets. Okay. Even in the 1989 Basel Convention, the International Law on Waste Trade, it took place before the sachet waste boom. Its amendment requires countries to consent before waste shipments are imported. And some government are calling to strengthen the law, particularly with single-use plastics. Um, much as with the ongoing Global Plastics Treaty. The treaty should address plastic pollution in all environment and at all stages of the plastics life cycle. The scope of the treaty should encompass at a minimum the production, design, use, and disposal of all plastic materials. It should work upstream to eliminate the harmful chemicals and polymers used in the production of plastic and also eliminate unnecessary or a non-essential plastics application. We already have lots of evidence-based models, business models, and product redesign and available reuse and materials, no, and containers and practices. So they don't have any more reasons not to comply. Okay, there are lots of practicing already. There are genuine and sustainable solutions that would end the sachet crisis. So join us. Let us build our collective power towards zero waste. Oppose false solutions and greenwashing. We must all seek corporate accountability and push for environmental justice in a just transition. It is high time for the corporate to be accountable and prioritize people's health and the environment over profit. So let's all call on turning off the tap in plastic production. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Eileen. Very powerful message. I think when you really call out for accountability for corporations at this point in our world. So a big thank you to our three speakers, Rayang, Gopang, and Eileen. This has been a very informative and interesting discussion. But, you know, I actually learned a lot, and there's definitely a lot to digest at this point. So we're opening the floor to some questions. There's already a few questions in the bank, but please do send your burning questions to our panelists. So maybe I'll start with my questions first. I'll direct all the questions to the panelists. So I think Eileen started the whole push for corporate accountability. So I'm going to ask everyone, especially since Eileen's presentation is sort of where the whole narrative peaks. What roles do public policy and consumers play in countering or otherwise worsening the world's plastic problems? Eileen made a point about tax breaks. Is it even effective for encouraging zero waste approaches? And what does corporate accountability look like in, as we sort of transition away from plastic use or sort of set up that timeline? I'm sort of directing all these questions to the panelists. Who'd like to go first?
I can go first.
Okay, Ryan. Yeah, what do you think?
About the corporate accountability, the timelines. So we have this Minister of Environment and Forestry Regulations issued in 2019 that mandates all of the corporations, it's not only FMCGs, to have the roadmap on waste reductions. So it's not only plastic waste, it's also glass waste, aluminum, paper, any kind of waste. So the timeline is ideally it's 10 years from now, from the 2019. So it's the deadline is by the end of 2029. So, but until now, so we have these regulations for like 4 years, almost 4 years now, but it's only 30 corporations, and most of them is the FMCGs, submitted their plan. And another issue is we don't have any idea what is their plan. So there is no transparency both from the government and from the manufacturers, the corporations, what is actually their plans on tackling their own waste. And we have some information because of most of them is doing the PR stuff around that, but actually we don't have any idea what is exactly their yearly milestones or their targets until 2029 around this issue. So it's also we have our contacts in the ministry, and this is also their challenges on how they can keep track of their target, of their commitments on this. There is no baselines in the documents of the roadmap. So it's also hard to know, hard to monitor about how they really can really do the commitments until the 2029. For the sachet itself, there is no ban on sachets until now from the regulations, but the idea from the regulation is to not sell any sachets less than 50 milliliters. So yeah, so there will be sachets, and the overall reductions for the sachet waste is only 30%. But the good thing is, from the retail side and the hotel, restaurant, cafes, all of the single-use plastics like plastic bags, styrofoam, cutlery, straws, single-use plates, and bowls needs to be banned by the end of 2029. So yeah, so it's still a long time, but at least from the regulations, we have some good things from them.
Okay, thanks. Maybe from the Philippine context, maybe I'm really curious to from what Eileen sees, because I think really corporate accountability at this point is, I think, really, I would say, not even a radical solution. I mean, from the timeline that Ryan gave us, like 2029, I would argue that it's kind of short. Don't you guys agree? I mean, shouldn't be quicker that these policies should be implemented. So Eileen, what do you think?
Yes. Actually, I'm thinking, if we say plastic reduction or eliminating plastic, one would think it's an Herculean task. Okay, it's really very hard. But then, at some point, we may also like to think, why does these companies, multinational companies, would rather setting and giving millions of dollars for cleanup and recycling, where in fact the root of the problem is to eliminate the production of these plastics. So it is much more sustainable solutions, no? So than having the cleanups, giving fundings for plastic credits or offsettings just to collect and recover their plastic waste, no? So it's because they're reaping profits, millions and dollars of profits, and it's just a small portion that they're giving this for the cleanups, yearly cleanups, no?
Yeah.
So it's just a portion. I think it's just 3% of what they're currently earning, no? So giving tax incentives could mean a lot. It is because the computation is based on the income of the company, and it's not just a minimum amount that you are contributing for a cleanup, no? So but then it should serve as an incentive, no? So if one country has an EPR law, there are penalties and provisions, no? There are usually penalties and provisions. So it's just like a carrot and stick. So you
Oh my.
provide some penalties for not for not following the law, but at the same time you provide them and pushing them the incentive to be on the other side. Not just you could we will be hitting two birds in one stone, no? We could eliminate plastics, but at the same time they would also be thinking, we will also be having tax breaks, no? That would also help. So it's some kind of incentives that to be given to them to push the right thing. So I think that's one.
Gopang, what do you think? Because you really talked about waste to energy approaches, the RDF problems. So what do you think about this, whole push for, more corporate accountability?
Yeah, based on our work, in our organization work, the end of pipe solutions, such as WTA and so on and so on. It's linking with the how the corporate avoiding their obligation to, for example, in Indonesia, they need to changing their model of business. They need to find another solution that more environmental friendly. But the corporate using the momentum when the government, when the international finance institution promoting the technology that can be a problem solving of their products. For example, Unilever in Indonesia, I forget to mention that, they claim that their waste, their plastic sachet, delivered to the RDF plant facility. So the problems of the sachet will be solved by WTA, by RDF. So I think it is what happened when these kinds of whole solution related with how the corporate, multinational corporations, transnational corporations, avoiding their obligations. In Indonesia, actually, they have a regulation on extended producer responsibility since 2008. But after almost 15 years, they didn't do anything. They only using, okay, we have a recycling, we have a RDF facility, and so on and so on. So it is what happens with the corporate accountability will never be achieved if the transnational corporation, they never changing their model of business. I think it is what I can explain about the relation between the corporate accountability, between their conventional business as usual model, and what should they do with the changing of the regulation and changing with the community's demand for the toxic-free feature, for the environmental friendly features. Yeah, just for me, Raman.
Okay, thanks. Really interesting takes. If you ask me really interesting takes at this point, I wouldn't even call it radical, but so maybe let's go to the Q&A portion of the, sorry, not Q&A, but to the audience. I have two questions here. So let's start with the first question. First question asks is it possible to push the government to ask for, companies' responsibility, especially the company that support open burning and WTE facilities, because we know it has negative impacts to the community's health around the facilities? Is there any collaboration between environmental NGOs and health NGOs in pushing the issue? Maybe anyone from the panel would like to take the cudgels first to answer the question.
I can go first, Raman.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, I think Break Free from Plastic have so many members that working in the specific issue. For example, the health issue, and also relating with the toxic and persistent organic pollutants. I can recommend Healthcare Without Harms, one of the Break Free from Plastic member that have so many experts at the health issue linking with the waste to energy incineration also. And Eileen also joined the IPAN network, international network that focusing on the toxic. I think they can be a reference for the specific issue. And for the next, everything is possible. Yeah. I will to give a more optimistic. It depends on the governments. If we can mapping the government's stakeholders mapping, we can do a good strategy that will be impacted our goals. For example, the Indonesian government, Rahayang mentioned that our government promoting RDF, promoting WTA as part of the climate solution. It's part of our nationally determined contribution. So it's difficult to engaging with the government for delaying or stopping WTA or RDF. So we need to changing our approach using a litigation process. In 2017, Alliance for Zero Waste Indonesia, also with WALHI and the communities impacted with the WTA project, show the central governments that publishing the presidential decree for the building 7 WTA incinerator. We winning this litigation process at the Supreme Court. So it is what we can do if the government didn't have good intended to using zero waste solutions and choosing the false solution. I think at the public space, we also can promoting the zero waste solution as the narrative shifting. Okay, when the government promoting false solution at the public space, we can promoting zero waste solution. We did with the Alliance for Zero Waste Indonesia, Break Free from Plastic also doing that. So we have other option that more be a good solutions. And we can do financial advocacy. It is a new one that Wali also working with the Global Alliance Incinerator Alternative at the regional level, at global level. We can intervene the funders or the investment. They have a regulation. For example, ADB have energy policy review. So we can join the consultation. We can join the process to put the incinerator not be a part of the project that will be funded by ASEAN Development Bank. Yeah, it is what we can do at the regional or international level. And WHO have a recommendation in 2015. They did not recommend incinerator as the solution for medical waste. So we can use some of the research from the international organization to be part of the narration to the government. You cannot do that because it is contradiction with the health issue, finance issue, and environmental issue. And the last thing, I think, Ramon, at the grassroots level, we can working with the communities that impacted with this project. For example, we are working with the Waste Pickers Association at the Surakarta city. They will be impacted with the WTA project. Also in India, I heard that the civil society working closely with the waste pickers so they can avoiding WTA and focusing to support waste pickers as part of the zero waste solution and circular economy. So we need to also strengthen the communities that impacted with this project. The voice from the grassroots, it's so important. So we can have a legitimation when we advocacy and at the government or the international institution. Thank you, Raman.
Yeah. Would anyone like to add? Would anyone like to add to the discussion, or should we? Do you guys want to tack on or try to answer another question? Because I think second question is quite interesting. If you guys are interested, because one question here says that many people think that incinerator is the right solution. Okay, because they see the Singaporean government successfully solve their waste problem with this technology. Is there any action from UN bodies regarding this matter?
Yeah, I can respond. Maybe Eileen can completely answering about the UN body at the international level. I didn't expert on that. Yeah, from the questions, he mentioning also Singapore as the success story of WTA. It's also happened in our government. They always mentioning the successful WTA in Singapore, in Japan. But we have a different context, Ramon. I will repeat again. The composition of waste is so different. In Indonesia, 50 until 60% organic. So we need to a different approach rather than choose the WTA that suitable for the plastic. And we have an impact if we burning plastic from the open landfill until to contain burning at the WTA. And yeah, I forget the question. I need to revisit the questions.
Yeah. So the question here from an audience member asks is, is incinerator the right solution? Because the Singaporean government is sort of the gold standard for pushing this whole narrative, that they've solved their waste problem using this technology, using the solution.
Okay, I will go with the regulations. I mentioned before that Singapore have a more strict standard on environmental standard. For example, the emission standard, I think Singapore much better than in Indonesia. I mentioning before that our emission air emission standard is 1/3 than WHO standard for example PM 2.5, PM 10. It is lower than WHO standard. I think Singapore much better on environmental standard. It is one aspect than other on composition waste. While you have, I think it can be a good story that we assessing 15 small scale incinerator, and based on our report, from the 15 small scale incinerator, most of them did not operate because the problem of the electricity, they need other fuel, they need electric, and they have a problems with the communities living near the small scale incinerator. They have a complaint from the communities. They have a problems with fly ash and bottom ash. So it is the example that small scale incinerator with 2-ton capacity, they did not operate because of some technical problem. They also have a complaint from the communities living near the plant. And the fun fact is this small scale incinerator buying by the communities and refusing by the community after operating 3 months, 6 months, and no more than 1 year. So it is what happens in the grassroots that pilot story of the incinerator.
Okay, thanks, Gopang. I have another interesting question here from the audience. What are the challenges to implement the reuse revolution? I'd like to direct the questions to Rayang and Eileen for this, especially since, your presentations talked about that.
Yeah, so the reuse, if we refer to the Ellen MacArthur reuse framework, it turns out that not all people understand about the real reuse definition. So we know about the reusing our shopping bags, reusing our cutleries, reusing our tumbler. But when we talk deep about the reuse, there is very lot of our stakeholders understand about the return systems, which is really, in my perspective, which really will replace the sachet narratives. So, so the challenges is we need to involve them in any our activities so they can understand more about what the reuse is and how can they really integrate it into their regulation. So it takes time. We just start the reuse revolutions last years, and our experience in helping facilitate Jakarta government to ban plastic bags, it takes 7 years. So I hope it won't take 7 years to implement the reuse systems, but yes, it needs time to really understand how this reuse works. So that's why we partner with the reuse operators, the startups that have the experience on the ground on how the reuse really works, and we help them, we facilitate them how can this models can be upscaled through the regulation. So yeah, I think there is challenging in understanding how the reuse really works, and we really need the role of the startups or the business sectors to build the examples on this.
What about you, Eileen? Do you think?
Yes, no. So for the reuse, no, I think one of the challenges is that the materials being used to promote the reuse is also a false solution. No, for example, that's one of the challenges. They would be promoting plastic containers. These are the ones being used, no, to put on all the food, all the stuff that you bought from something. But then the same materials that you're using for reuse is already made or recycled from a toxic plastic. So and there are lots of additives being added. So that is one of the challenges. How to be able, how do these companies and the how do these companies produce the type of material, no? So every time we're discussing about reuse, we're always promoting use the glass No, so use glass materials. Use those made from wood or bamboos instead of having the usual plastic containers because you don't have the chemical content of that or what additives has been added to that. No, so the reuse of materials, especially of containers and others, are good. But then we really have to make sure because that they don't have um toxic materials in the reuse containers. So because it would be the consumers that will be victimized later on, no? So that would be one of the challenges because some consumers they are already um starting to proliferate the good ones, no? The good ones and all the good narratives about and then making the trend of using the reuse, no? But then if one would be experiencing some side effects coming from the plastic additives that can leach in them, um it would not be good, you know, to the campaign. So that's one that they could think about. And then for the government, they should start with the technical and support, no, especially in producing this eco design for the reuse materials, no. And then good for the government to support the package free. You could buy everything not wrapped in plastic. So that's one good samples. And then you still have you don't have any challenges if you don't wrap it in plastics, no? And other communities can easily get it, no? So the easiest that they could get their materials or the easiest that they can get their food and products much better, no? So the consuming public can try the glass or the metals. Here in the Philippines, we have during my high school days, my elementary days, we have this metal lunch boxes. So and it's triple layer. So and then everyone can also use that in bringing food for lunch in the office because it is not just safe, it is sturdy. No, so you could it's one of the consumers can use as well.
So yeah, I think I really heard fascinating answers. I would argue that most of them are pretty easy to implement or even practical, but I think at this point it's important to note, you know, especially that we're reaching the end of this forum, that it's not just merely about, you know, what do you call that, consumers taking the responsibility, but it's mostly the responsibility of the government and corporations to push, especially for this. So I think it's really up to especially global South countries like the Philippines, Malaysia, Indonesia, most Southeast Asian countries to push for this whole narrative of taking corporations and businesses to account. Because I think here I noticed that, you know, all these false narratives are sort of harming efforts to stem what we can do or address, you know, the climate crisis at this point. Because it's what the idea of the climate crisis for some people might be vague, but I think when you think about how plastics sort of figure into that whole conversation, to the whole discourse, the governments and corporations have a huge responsibility, you know, besides consumers taking that whole agenda and, you know, doing their part, but it's mostly policy, you know. That's what I notice here, you know, with all these false narratives. So at this point, I'd like to thank everyone, Eileen, Gopang, and Ryan, for this really informative discussion, you know, about just how we can break free from the whole plastic cycle. Okay, so thanks everyone. So before we wrap up the forum, Climate Tracker Asia is inviting journalists and storytellers to submit multimedia story proposals for our initiative titled Uncovering the Plastic Crisis, Stories of Pollution and Solutions. This is also in partnership with the BFFP. We are looking for solutions-oriented stories related to the topics discussed today, as well as stories on the links between plastic pollution and climate change, sachet culture, and single-use packaging. Solution stories, or those highlighting how communities solve the crisis, are preferred. Grantees must also publish high-quality reports on plastic pollution and solutions before March 31, 2023. They will receive a story grant amounting to 200 euros, mentoring, and networking opportunities. Feel free to submit your pitches until today, February 28. Applications will be reviewed every Friday, so send your pitches right away, as we only offer 12 story grant opportunities. So that's all the time we have for this session. Thank you so much for joining us. And in the previous sessions, to learn more about ending plastic pollution, visit www.breakfreefromplastic.org. Do not forget to read stories about plastics and climate change on our website, climatetracker.org and climatetracker.asia. Thank you, everyone. Wait, I saw
Thank you,
something
everyone.
that we should do a picture. I think, yes, we need to take a photo.
Thank you, everyone. I'll do another screenshot. So 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
you.
you. See you. Bye-bye.